Hello everyone and welcome along to another edition of Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Delighted to say on this episode we have a fresh guest in the studio. Welcome for the first time to Racing Weekly to Gavin Lynch. Now, this is what we call in the trade an upgrade. Poor Sam's not here, so we can say whatever we want about him. Yeah. Sam will be on the show a little bit later on, so we can't say too much. Okay. But for now, it's an upgrade, Gavin. Now, I've observed your work from a distance, and I've observed your work over a variety of different aspects of the sport, because I've seen you as a punter. I understand you've been a bookmaker briefly. Yeah, briefly, yeah. Charity fundraiser. Your dad trained horses. Yeah. I mean, there's a great deal of history in the sport for you. How would you describe yourself to people at home?
I suppose just a punter primarily, and then I got involved with the Racing Post maybe 10 or 12 years ago. Did a bit with them, and then I did up in the Ante with David Jennings for 5 years, which was getting paid to talk about Cheltenham. Which
Awful.
Awful, yeah. And yeah, still a punter, and after 5 years, I decided just to set up my own website, so thankfully that's going well so far.
It is going well. Now, I believe at the Cheltenham Festival last year, was it 10 Ante-Post winners that you fired up beforehand?
Yeah, between up in the Ante and also I did a piece for the Racing Post that they did a pull-out section a week or two in advance, so there was some in that, so yeah, not too bad.
And how do you go about doing your, if you don't mind giving us a little bit of insight, how do you go about compiling an Ante-Post list? Because a lot of people think they've got an idea of how to do it. I mean, I've always thought I know how to do it, but I know whenever it comes to it, I don't always get the strike rate high enough.
I think the one thing is that it changes all the time. For example, it's getting more difficult as the years go by to guess where Willie Mullins is sending all his horses. So and now that his stable has got so many stars, that's going to even get trickier. I would say the fundamental thing is to pick horses that are going to go for a certain race. Later on, we're going to talk about Banbridge, who's like 12 to 1 to win the Arkle, 12 to 1 to win the Turners. Yeah. Now, if you back him to win both, that's not even 6 to 1. It's 11 to 2 a winner. So don't do that, because he'll be more than 11 to 2 if in a month's time Joseph says that he's going to A or B. Yeah. So I think it's really important. Now, for example, I backed Ashrow Diamond before she won on Saturday. She wasn't very impressive on Saturday, but she won anyway. I backed her for the Mayor's Novice Hurdle last week because she's going to go for that race. Right. But trying to guess where I got caught out last year with Sir Gerhard, I tipped him up for the Supreme. He ends up winning the Ballymore. Same. So like, you're kind of right, but you lose money. Yeah. So trying to guess what's inside the trainer's mind, we all do it, but I think we shouldn't do it.
Just tell me briefly as well about the experience that you had being a bookmaker, and whether that has helped you enormously, or has it given you something of an edge as a punter?
It helped me enormously. I suppose the two things for me was the advent of the internet means now that you can go and study all the videos you want if you have the time. And secondly, being a bookmaker, before that I would have always thought the bookies know which horse is going to win the next race. They just whisper to each other 5 minutes beforehand. But when I went to the racetrack, nobody whispered to me at all. Yeah. I think after a year's work, I only made $5,000, which was a waste of time. So then I decided, right, the game is not fixed. If you go and do your study, you can make money. So that's what I tried to do since.
And is that the message? If you were having a chat to somebody who said, look, I'm interested in becoming a punter full-time, is it simply a case of you cannot become a punter full-time unless you put in the hours watching racing, making notes, studying the form? I mean, I think, watching and remembering, putting the... I was told by Steve Mellish, who's been on this show before, he said to me that the brain is like a computer and you're constantly feeding information. Whether you think you are or not, you're constantly feeding information, and it automatically will come out with algorithms and give you a decision. When you open the paper and you look at a race card and you look at the horses on there, it automatically sort of, there's a sixth sense about what's right from the information that you put in.
I suppose that comes after years and years of it. If you're new to the game or you're thinking of doing a bit of punting, I would say that, me and you could talk all day about golf. We were chatting earlier about maybe Man United or Liverpool, etc. There's no way I could make money on football. I don't know enough. I think you have to be very specific, and with that, so I just do Irish horse racing, a little bit of English racing, and then obviously Cheltenham a lot. I think if you're specific, that's good. You should bet small to begin with. Definitely, what's fundamental is to keep a diary, a P&L account. And if after a year or two you're making a couple of grand, well then maybe you could bet a little bit heavier. But just keep it fun. Make sure it's never affecting your bank balance or your mood or anything like that. So yeah.
And one last thing about your growing up and the involvement through your dad, that often, I think, is overlooked when people are talking about getting people into racing. And I think the involvement, watching racing, sharing the experience with adults, like you did with your dad whilst he was training, how important do you think that is for the future of our sport?
Yeah, sure. When you're a young lad and you're 8 or 10, all you want to be is your dad, you know. So he was a gambler. He was a wild gambler, but back in the days, in the 80s and 90s, you couldn't make money because there was no internet. He was a small trainer. He trained a horse to be third in the Triumph Hurdle. He also picked out Route Supreme in the sales for my brother. They were in the sales one day. My brother was mad to get knowledge from Dad because he was a real good judge of picking out a horse. And he says, what would you look for in a horse? And Dad said, see that fellow over there? That's what you need. See the walk on him and the ears and the head and where the back leg comes past the front legs and all these things. Yeah. He's a lovely horse. So they went and looked at his page and they bought him for 60 grand and that was Rule Supreme. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, if we could capture that and bottle it, write it down, sell it to people, that's... well, we're going to use all of those skills. We're going to have a look back at what we saw on the weekend, both at Cheltenham and in Ireland, and then we're going to have a look ahead to what's coming up racing-wise over the next few days. Good. And hopefully we'll find a winner or two. Well, in fact, we're going to put some pressure on you. No winners, no return. That's what we're saying. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's great to have Gavin on board for today's show, and it's time now on Racing Weekly for this week's Racing Recap. And of course, Cheltenham is an obvious place to start. So on Friday, very little doubt that one of the star performances of the entire meeting came from Paul Nichols's Hermes Allen. How impressed were you? Yeah,
he was very good. He beats Music Drive by 9 lengths. Just to keep things in perspective, Music Drive, I think last year was beaten 18 lengths in the Cheltenham Bumper and 22 lengths in Punchestown. So I don't think Briscoe stayed, is my own opinion on the favourite in the race. But he was very good. He was good in Stratford. He's only a 5-year-old. And of course, trained by Paul, he jumped well, basically made all the running. And then we get the quote that, the usual quote that he's another Denman, same as Braveman's game 2 weeks ago. It was Grenadine. With performance.
In fairness, he did quantify the Denman quote, didn't he? He said, like Denman, he improved a lot from his first run. We didn't think there was much there when we went to Stratford in terms of readiness.
Because I thought it was odd that he started such a brilliant horse in Stratford.
Exactly.
Like Paul Nichols doesn't do that, so that looked like it was a slight negative. But then the other day he was excellent. The only thing is he's 8-1 there at Bet365 for the Ballymore. The one thing is Cheltenham, the Ballymore's 4 months away. You cannot back a horse in the Ballymore until you know where Facile Vega's going. Because Facile Vega will go off odds on the Ballymore no matter what's in it, and probably win it. So you can't back Hermes Allen until you know where Facile Vega's going, I think.
That's a fair point. He is heading towards the Challow next.
Yeah, he'll win that.
It's the usual tried and trusted formula for Paul Nicholls with his smart staying young hurdlers, Stage Star, Brave Man's Game, etc. They did that, so he's going to try the same with.
He'll be odds on that. He'll win that, and then he'll be 6-1 for the Ballymore.
We'll talk about Facile Vega a little bit later on. Let's spin through a few of the other races. We won't spend too much time if you feel they don't deserve. What about on Saturday? The Triumph Trial Juvenile Hurdle, scriptwriter for Milton Harris.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I thought he was very solid. He battled well. It's interesting, the war correspondent train in Ireland was third, so that'll give us a kind of an idea in a month or two's time, the comparison in form. Personally, I wouldn't back him at 16-1 the Triumph Hurdle, I wouldn't. Yeah. He was a decent flat horse, rate 102, trained by Aidan O'Brien.
What did Aidan think of him when he...
Sure, look, Rishi, we were all delighted down in Ballydoyle, come here, sure, look, wasn't he great? We're delighted from Milton Harris, so yeah, super.
It's Richie.
Richie. But yeah, scriptwriter, he was solid. I wouldn't back him for the Triumph at that price, no.
Okay, 16-1, as you say, with Bet365 for the Triumph. Move on and talk about the Arkle Novice Chase. Now, this looked one of the better races over the 3 days, and I believe that we've got a very smart horse, but you've already alluded to the fact that we don't know where this horse is going to end up.
Yeah.
Banbridge.
On my website, Ryan McHugh's an odds compiler, and he sits with me when we talk about Cheltenham. And he made a brilliant point yesterday when we recorded a video, and he said that unlike Willie, who's got 5 or 6 for these races, Joseph doesn't. So Joseph isn't going to run it in one or the other to avoid another horse, so that's good. So I think in the coming while we'll get an idea of which race he's going for. Will he go for the Drinmore? Will he go to Leopardstown of Christmas? The horse likes decent ground, so he's not going to run on heavy ground. But the way the winters are going now, that Leopardstown of Christmas often is decent ground. I was really impressed with him. He was excellent in Gorham Park. and he was excellent again. His jumping is just
professional, isn't it? It's just like a seasoned horse.
Like he's definitely gaining lengths literally from every horse. So if he shows up on the turners over 2.5 or even in the Arkle, I like backing 1 or 2 horses, maybe even having a saver on the third one in a race, because there's nothing as bad as watching a race in Cheltenham in March and some horse wins. You always loved him and you lose in the race. So even if I end up backing a Sir Gerhard in the race, I'll definitely have something in Banbridge.
All right. Just to update on the prices for Banbridge at the moment, Bet365 have 12 to 1 for the Arkle, 12 to 1 for the Turner, 16 to 1 for the Brown Advisory, 20 for the National Hunt Chase.
Hard to see. He won't end up in the Brown Advisory, you would think.
Yeah.
Hard to see that now.
No, he looked to me, first glance, as a Turner's horse, but
yeah, because he won the Martin Pipe obviously last March. He went to Aintree and ran really terribly over 3 miles, but that didn't say whether he stayed or not. I think eventually he might get 3 miles. I think the Turners as well would suit him better.
The Gold Cup handicap chase on Saturday, Galore, put up by 1 or 2 judges on Racing Weekly last week, so well done to those guys. Galore, despite, I'd say, errors in his jumping, managed to win. Yeah,
I backed French Dynamite.
Sorry.
I think French Dynamite might have won only for the mistake of the last. French Dynamite was running off 148, Galore was off 142, only second run in over 18 months. It'd be interesting if either of those two perhaps ended up in the Ultima, perhaps in March, over 3 miles. I could see Galore staying further, definitely. As you say, never really got into a rhythm, didn't jump particularly well, but after the last, it showed a brilliant attitude, so nice horse.
All right. Well done to Jamie Snowden. And as I said, Paul Ferguson tipped up Galore on the show last week. Now, the Schlur Chase took place on Sunday. No Edwardstone. And then Sizing Potsy also came out. Yeah. So we were just left with Nuba Negra to spin round, and didn't really tell us much, other than we know that Nuba Negra is alive. He's well. He jumped like he always does around Cheltenham when he gets his ground. Yeah. The only thing I found interesting afterwards was that Dan Skelton said after the race, no Tingle Creek, possibly may miss out most of the season, and the whole plan would be hopefully get similar conditions that he had on Sunday to what he'll have for the Queen Mother Champion Chase. Yeah,
look, he's better fresh. You know those Spanish breads, you know what they're like. He's turning 9 in January, which to me is always a negative, particularly if you don't have a lot in hand. I think he missed the boat back in 2021, 18 months ago. I think it was a poor Champion Chase. Put the kettle on, finished second that day. Slightly unlucky, you can say, but to me he's not resolute enough in a finish, so I couldn't have him for the Champion Chase, no.
Who do you like for the Champion Chase now? I mean, is it because I think this? Because if you look at it, there's Energumen, Shishkin, Edwardstone. Well, he could have run, but he didn't. They're saving him. He might run on Saturday at Ascot.
In the handicap, yeah.
Yeah. So who would be your?
You'd have to when a horse pulls up like Shishkin did in the Champion Chase with National Hunt horses, I'd be against them. I just think. Like I was against Envoy LN. I used to love the horse, and then I was gone off him. Yeah. And I was thrilled to see him win in Down Royal, but I couldn't have backed him in Down Royal because generally they don't come back. Energumen is turning 9, which is not a positive, but still he hasn't got that much mileage on the clock. So for the moment, he sets the standard definitely.
Okay, so that's something to look out for. If you're interested in Nuba Negra at the moment, he's 25 to 1 with Bet365 for the Champion Chase. I mean, I can see him getting placed again in the race. I mean,
maybe, and there's a horrible expression, they'll ride him like a non-trier, but you know what I mean? He'll be out the back.
Pick up pieces.
And he'll be ridden to finish third, really. Yeah. And then if they went too quick, he'd love that and then stay on late,
The Greatwood took place on Sunday, and I like to move it one off top weight, a mark of 142 for the Twiston Davies.
Your favourite song?
Not would be my favourite. There's a lot of argument between the Twiston Davies kids afterwards about who named the horse. I mean, that was probably the most fierce debate that took place at Cheltenham over the weekend. The interesting thing about this horse, though, is Nigel Twiston Davies after the race smiled with a little bit of there's a little bit of cringe when he said, "Yeah, Champion Hurdle," because obviously Constitution Hill, Honeysuckle, Volban, Stateman, a whole host of horses.
He can't win the Champion Hurdle.
But that's where he's got to go, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you see, he won off 142, so what does he only get, £10 maybe, 9 or 10? Yeah. So he's up to 152. He has a choice. He can run in the County Hurdle in March because it's open-ended, there's no top to that handicap. To win the Champion Hurdle this season, a very high standard. Like, Honeysuckle is a proper 165 mare, and he has to give her £7. So he has to go to 172. So he's already £20 off that. So, like, he can't win the Champion Hurdle, but as you say, there's a few horses there that they're between a rock and a hard place. They're not grade 1 horses maybe, but they're getting too high for a handicap. So,
what did you make of the quality of the race with the hurdles being removed, etc.? There's a bit of kerfuffle. Certainly, working on ITV, listening to thoughts of Ruby Walsh, Richard Hawes, etc.
Yeah.
They were talking about the delaying of the decision.
They could have made a decision earlier.
Yeah.
But then you see you kind of cloud cover, and then you don't have. Like, I believe that for examle, Annie Power, when she fell in the Mayor's Hurdle that time, I just wonder, it was late in the evening, did that have an impact even when it is in March? Look, the sun is going to be in the same place next year at the exact same time. The only option they have is to start at 10:30, but they're not going to do that. So
wouldn't be the craziest option, would it?
Yeah, well, the sun is coming around there in the west, and it's there at whatever the time the race was at, 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you do? Put sunglasses on the horses.
Well, it might be quite interesting to have a different time.
Yeah. Well, if you want to make sure that the sun is not a factor, you'd have to have the last race run by 2 o'clock.
Not a problem. I can see that happening. I'd like to try that.
Yeah.
Speaking of trials, the Supreme Novices Hurdle Trial on Sunday saw Fenner Cross winning. Now, I know there were a couple of horses in there that were quite well thought of. I mean, Springwell Bay for John Joe O'Neill, Iberico Lord for the Nicky Henderson team. I think both horses are quite well thought of. But this horse won really nicely. I mean, I love the trainer. I think he's extremely good with his horses that he races. John McConnell.
He does very well. He got slightly checked at the bend, but this was only a Supreme trial in name. This, Fenner Cross wouldn't win the Supreme if he started now.
He said it himself, John, after the race.
Like, you wouldn't back him at 50s. Where he'll end up, I'm not sure, but I thought it was a weak race.
Yeah, I thought it was disappointing to see how easily the English horses were brushed aside again. It's a worry, but it's a running theme anyway. So that's Cheltenham on the weekend. Was there anything else from Cheltenham?
Yeah, I think Queen's Gamble's worth a mention.
Yeah.
The 4-year-old mare, she won last April in Cheltenham. She bolted up again here. She's only won, say 2 mares bumper so far, but she's been incredibly impressive. Yeah. I just had a look there. There's been 30 Cheltenham bumpers. That's where she's going to go. And there's been 4 mares that have won the Cheltenham bumper. Total Enjoyment, Muckle Meg, Fiona, and I think Relegate were the 4. Yeah. I could be wrong there, but it's a very difficult thing to do, but she definitely has a chance. She's 10-1, I think, roughly, for the champion bumper.
I love her. I'm hoping that she turns into the star that she promises to be. Primarily, I'm a bit of a sentimentalist, and we know that Oliver Sherwood's had a tough time of things with his health scare recently.
Lovely for Jonathan Burke as well.
Absolutely, he had a great day on Saturday. Yeah. So if Queen's Gamble can turn into a superstar, it'd be wonderful.
She could. She's done nothing wrong so far. She's unbeaten and she's been very impressive. So yeah,
there's nothing more enjoyable, I think, for watching at Cheltenham and watching a horse devouring the hill, and she's done that twice now. Clearly, the Cheltenham hill is something that she relishes, and it's not a problem to her.
Yeah, and I find it strange that people have absolutely no issue whatsoever with the 1,000 guineas and the Oaks, and then I hear people complaining that there's a Mayor's Hurdle and a Mayor's Novice Hurdle at Cheltenham. I don't get that. I think it's great, and I think that the programme now for Mayors is excellent, and that's why we're getting to see mares like this in training.
Anything else from Cheltenham? Does He Know, I thought, was a smart performance off top weight in the handicap chase. There was a Knight and Lambourne, Amarillo Sky. Magic Dancer was a nice story on the Friday.
For the veterans? For
the veterans chase.
Yeah,
given a great ride by Richard Patrick.
Yeah, there was some good racing. I was just slightly disappointed that, like, we're only talking about 2 or 3 horses here that I think have a chance of winning in come March, which is
just highlight the 3 or 2 or 3 that you think might have a chance.
Hermes Allen, Banbridge and Queen's Gamble.
From the 3 days of racing?
Yeah, from the 3 days. Those 3. Apart from those 3, I couldn't see much else.
All right. Should we turn our attention to Ireland? Have a look at some of the horses that featured there. So we had Brazil beating Field d'Or at Naas on Saturday. Yeah. I think a lot of people would have expected Field d'Or to need a run. What did you make of it? Yeah,
now, the one thing I'll say is that the market said that Field d'Or was fit. It was back from, I think, 11 to 10 into 8 to 11, so there was a lot of money for it. And Brazil was getting £9. Brazil won well in the end. Prairie Dancer and Field d'Or took each other on, even though it was only a 3-runner race. And because Prairie Dancer jumped to its right, so did Field d'Or a little bit. And in the end, Mark Walsh sat in Brazil till the second last, produced down the outside. Field d'Or made a mistake. But in the end, Brazil won easy, getting the £9, as I said, and has a rating of 142. Again, not good enough to win a Grade 1. So are they going to come back maybe for a county or a Coral Cup if they come back in March? I'm not sure.
you'd imagine that will probably be the likely
considering one of the boodles, you know, so
Yeah.
it's used to the hustle and bustle of a handicap.
Jeremy's Flame, probably one of the most admirable horses around, I think. What did you make of that performance?
Yeah, she was good. I had Gentleman to Me in a multiple, and he was a huge drifter from 4 to 11 out to 4 to 7. I was talking to a judge at Naas, and they just seemed to think that it might need the run.
Yeah.
And Willie said that yesterday. The thing is, when you've got a horse that's so keen, like Gentleman to Me, like he's really keen, he's exuberant, he attacks his fences, which suits a 2-mile chase. But to be like that, you have to be fully fit, I think, because otherwise you just fall on hole, and that's what he did. So he ran quite poorly. Cours Sublime and Jeremy's Flame jumped the last basically together. I'd say Cours Sublime was probably favourite at the time.
Yeah.
For Rachel. She had 2 bad falls on Saturday. But Henry's horses are flying. But yeah, and so are Gavin Cromwell's, and Jeremy's Flame was left to come home alone.
Okay, I'm going to leave the Liz Mullen hurdle for a little bit later, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Speaking of Henry de Bromley with Bob Ollinger and then Home by the Lee, but because I think there are a couple of talking points out of that race. But let's just deal with a few others. Captain Guinness in the Fortria Chase, excellent ride from Rachel Blackmore. Yeah,
very, very good. You'd have to say that the second horse, Riviere de Tell, was disappointing. I thought she'd win, but her jumping just was very, very ordinary. She wasn't having a cut at her fences at all. She was slowing up going into some of them. She was jumping to the right. So I think the race fell apart a little bit. Andy Dufresne, if anybody was trying to get out of jail on him, sorry.
It's a good one. Let's write that down.
Take that out.
No, leave that in.
But yeah, Captain Guinness did reasonably well to win. But yeah, look, the 3 of those aren't Grade 1 chasers. But they're, you know, you'd love to own all those horses.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? We kind of say they're not brilliant horses, but you'd love to own them.
Can you do a Morgan Freeman impression? That would be really, if you could.
No.
Not bad. Hollow Games chasing debut?
Yeah, excellent. It happened with Banbridge on at Cheltenham as well on Saturday. You're kind of thinking it's a 2.5 mile horse. Is it going to have the gears to win over 2 mile or 2 miles 1? Yeah. But when they jump out, make all and jump like that, no problem. Yeah. He absolutely bolted up. He emphasised, I have a massive gripe with National Hunt horses and trainers. Yeah. So he wins a point to point when he's just turned 4 in March, I think it was, when he was 4. And then what they do, they decide to put him into a bumpers for a year. Yeah. Then he goes novice hurdle. Now he won 2 bumpers. He also won a maiden hurdle and a Grade 3 novice hurdle. Yes. And then he comes back chasing again.
I agree on this.
Find it's like having a brilliant snooker player and telling them you have to play pool for 2 years. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I don't get it. Yes. I don't get it. So he's 6 now, he's turning 7. He's a gorgeous horse. He's really just a chaser. He was never a hurdler or a bumper horse. So the problem you have is, in terms of Cheltenham, he won't get into an open race until he's 8. Yeah. And I personally think that horses are best when they're 7 or 8.
Yeah, Florida Pearl went from bumpers, didn't he?
I have in my notes Florida Pearl. Like, he went from a bumper in Leopardstown and then on to Cheltenham. The following year at Christmas, he won a beginner's chase at 5. Yeah. He wins the RSA at 6. He wins the Irish Gold Cup 4 times.
One of the best chases we've seen.
And what's surprising is that Willie Mullins, that it works so well for him with a brilliant horse like that, he's hardly ever done it since. Yeah. So I just don't know why horses like Hollow Games go to bumpers and novice hurdles. It drives me mad.
I definitely see the logic.
But he's a good horse.
Absolutely. Hercule de Soy won the novice hurdle on Sunday.
Yeah, he did over 2 miles. Again, he's a keen type. Hung on from Imagine. The horse in 3rd place. I was in the airport last night coming here and I bumped into the owner of 3 Card Bragg. And we had a bit of a chat, and he said that, you know, they're going to step it up and trip probably. Right. The only way to run in the Royal Bond is if it came up heavy. Okay. But I think 3 Card Bragg is definitely the horse of those 3 I'd like to own. All right. And was it
Max McNeil, was it, that you did do?
I thought the chap's name said was Ross, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Maybe there's a couple of owners involved, I'm not sure. But Adrian Heston was there as well, very nice chap. But 3 Card Bragg for me, when he steps up to 2.5 miles, I think he's going to be a very good horse.
Okay, yeah, he looked good when he won, obviously, prior to that, and interesting to see what he can do. So then I'm going to take you into the Liz Mullen hurdle. How good was the ride by JJ Slevin on Home by the Lee? And then after you've dealt with that, where do you stand on Bob Ollinger?
So firstly about the ride, like I was chatting to Barry Geraghty there a few weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, surely your best ride ever is like Sire de Burley and the Pertemps. It was a ride like this, you know, pushing and hitting with a circuit to go. And he goes, no, it's not, because all you're doing the whole time is just
keeping the revs up.
Yeah, you're rowing away and you're pushing along. So he thinks the more tactical ones are the better rides where you have options. But JJ was brilliant. I think the horse touched 1,000 in running, which is amazing. Bob Ollinger touched 1.02 in running, so he looked all over winner after 2 out.
All right. And is he a horse that you'd be interested in playing in the future?
Not particularly, because I think he's unlikely to go back over fences because it didn't seem to suit him.
Yeah.
Like he was legless in Cheltenham when he won, and then he pulled up in Punchestown. He travelled unbelievable on Sunday.
Yeah.
I just wonder, could he end up being a 2-mile hurdler or like, you know, I know he's like 12 to 1 or whatever for the Stayers hurdle, right? But because he travelled so strongly and found nothing, I just don't know. I don't see him as a 3-miler. Okay. So maybe he's a 2.5-miler, but I'd love to see him. But because they have Honeysuckle in Henry's Yard, maybe they won't go back to 2 miles. But he certainly travelled well enough for 2 to 2.5.
He's beaten Flooring Porter by 10 lengths or something like that. So
yeah, but Home by the Lee beat him.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, but as Henry de Brommer had said, you know, you look back behind him, and you would have been, you know, shouting from the rooftops that Bob Ollinger's back.
Yeah, but he was getting a good bit of weight from Flooring Porter, and it was only 2.5 miles. The betting now is that Flooring Porter, I think, is out to like 5 to 1. I think with Bet365.
What about his run? How encouraging?
Yeah, it was okay. Like it wasn't. I thought he might run a bit better than that, even though he was giving away the weight. But he'll go back to 3 miles at Leopardstown at Christmas, and then straight to the Stayers. And it's always great watching Danny Mullins riding him, trying to, you know, as we'd say in Ireland, cod everybody in behind that he's going quick when he's not and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
Well, it was when ITV did a sort of close-up of Ruby Walsh spotted Danny Mullins looking up at the big screen just to see where everyone else is, when he can go. When
his ride last year in the Stayers hurdle was amazing because he goes fast for the first half a mile, then he slows it up for 1.5 miles, and then he waits and waits, and everybody's waiting to see when he's going to go. And actually, last year in the Stayers, he didn't kick on until the bend. So
is he the standard setter for the Stayers still? You see him as a one to beat.
He is. The dark one in it is obviously Blazing Cal, a very good novice hurdler for Charles Burns. Surprised that he's not sending him chasing, but I think he's 6 to 1 second favourite for the Stayers now. So. When he runs, there'll be a lot of eyes on him.
All right, okay. I'll leave you with an opportunity to round up anything else on the Irish scene.
I thought there was 1 or 2 others that are worth a mention. Ashrow Diamond, that we said, she only won by a length and a quarter in the first race, but it's tricky enough for a mare against Geldings in a maiden hurdle. She was getting the £7, but she's taken on some good horses. I backed her last week at 10s for the mare's novice. She wasn't impressive, and most firms cut her into 7 to 1. Okay. Now, fair play to Bet365, they're a standout price, they're 9 to 1, which, you know, that's fair enough. The one thing that gave me encouragement having backed her is that Paul Townend said that she took a blow, which means that she wasn't fully fit. Like, that performance definitely wouldn't win the mare's novice, but she might improve the next day. Hopefully she does. Also to mention, maybe 3 Stripe Life. He ran in a beginner's chase at Naas. I was there. Grand Jury was travelling very well when he came down. Now, somebody might say it was a tired fall, but I think the two of them are roughly even money, each of 2 in running at the time. And because Grand Jury fell, then 3 Stripe Life, it came home alone. So, he's decent. Now, he's only 7 to 1, I think, for a Sam's race, the Turners, and 8 to 1 for the Brown Advisory. To me, that's too short. If he showed up in a Turners against Banbridge and Hollow Games, 3 very good horses, but I'd be with Banbridge.
Yeah, so I'll be with Banbridge as well. So anything else in Ireland at all?
No, I think that's it. We forgot to mention maybe Zana here running so poorly in the Lismullen hurdle, but he's another horse that's kind of lost.
Caught in between what he wants
and that's with it.
And what he is and what everyone wants him to be. So if there was one horse from the weekend that you could pick from Cheltenham Island that you think might be a play for the anti-post market, which would be the one?
Well, I'm going to contradict myself here because the horse is Banbridge.
You're worse than Sam.
So the horse I was most impressed with was Banbridge. But the problem, as we said earlier...
Which race?
Yeah. Now, if it comes out next week that Joseph said he's definitely going for the Turners, I'll back him.
Do you have an in with the Joseph O'Brien yard?
No, I'd have to know somebody that knows Kevin Blake. So I don't.
Okay. So basically, it's a case of wait and see.
Yeah, wait and see. But I love Banbridge. I think he's very good. I think the 9 to 1 maybe with Ashrow Diamond with Bet365. I think that's still fair enough, even though she wasn't. There was no wow.
All right. Well, I enjoyed that. Lots of notes to make from that. Personally, Queen's Gamble, wherever she runs. I think she's going to run in a bumper at Huntingdon next month, December, and then
If she went to Aintree for the mayor's bumper, she'd probably be a certainty.
She'd be an absolute certainty.
Yeah, she'd go off even money for that. But
she's such a good record at Cheltenham. Let's just keep it simple.
Yeah, she's 2 from 2 there. So yeah, good horse.
All right, well, that's a look back at what we've seen at Cheltenham and in Ireland. We'll take a short pause. When we come back, Sam Turner will be joining us for our weekend preview. Right now, Racing Weekly, we're about to get into the weekend preview, but before we do that, just to let you know of Bet365 ITV racing offer. If you back a winner of 4-1 or more, place a bet on the next live ITV race and get your money back. If it loses, that money's back up to £50 and applies to the first single bet placed. Bet restrictions and T's and C's apply. New and eligible customers only. And it's also time now on Racing Weekly to introduce the third member of the team, and that is Sam Turner. Sam, thank you very much for sparing us the time. I understand you're very busy in all over the world and wherever you are right now, but I hope that you've had a very good weekend. I hope that you've enjoyed what we had at Cheltenham, etc. Before we get stuck into the weekend preview, just a brief word on what you've made of all the action recently.
I thought we saw some real quality at Cheltenham over the weekend and in Ireland, to be honest. I mean, just centering probably more on Cheltenham. I thought Banbridge was exceptional, probably one of the stars of the weekend. Hermes Allen, just the way that both of those two novices jumped in their respective heats, I thought was superb, really. I thought they were very precise, clinical, slick, everything you'd want from a novice, really. I thought they were exceptional. I saw a good performance from I Like to Move It in the Greatwood. I think the first two home in the Paddy Power were, I thought they both did well to run as well as they did, in spite of, what happened to them through the race. Probably not so much the runner-up, but obviously at the last he was a little bit less than fluent, and that probably cost him the race. But Gar Law jumped pretty poorly all the way around, really. Was less than fluent throughout his final round, and still managed to win. So I think there's a lot of promise from those two going forward, potentially over 3 miles. But I'm sure you've covered that to a good extent, you boys.
Yes, and actually it was also reassuring to hear that Gavin's assessment about the two of the best horses he saw falls in with yours, Hermes Allen and Banbridge. So we're on the right track. Let's look ahead to what we've got coming up this week. And of course, the Betfair Chase on Saturday at Haydock is the big one by name and by status, but not by field. At the moment, we've got A Plus Tard, obviously, very short. Protector at Royal Pagaille sadly is out, so we've left with 5. Bristol de Mai, Eldorado Allen and Frodon. Those are the 5 horses in it. I'll start with you here, Gav.
Yeah.
A Plus Tard, we expect him to win.
Yeah.
I really think he's gonna win easily.
Yeah, no, he'll win. Yeah. And what's interesting, he's 4-1 at the moment for the Gold Cup with Bet365, best price, and he'll win on Saturday. His rating is 180. Protectorat is 164. He's £16 clear in ratings. Exactly. So he'll probably run to 175, which is less than his best. And next week he'll be 5-2 for the Gold Cup. There you go.
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Do you see it similarly, Sam?
I do, unfortunately. We've had sort of 17 renewals of this race in this guise, and we've only had 1 9-runner race. We haven't even had a double-figure field in any of the times this race has been staged in this name. We've had 4 5-runner races as well, and it looks like we're going to get another one on Saturday, unfortunately. They're a good 5. I mean, Frodon's only in there to try and nick a bit of prize money, which is a bit disappointing. But as we saw at the weekend with the Slur Chase, Edwardstone versus Nube Negra, we only need to lose one of the sort of the main protagonists, like a Protectorat come out, or even, God forbid, the warm favourite, A Plus Tard, and then we are stuck with a rather substandard race. So I do think this race does need looking at, sort of race planning wise, but it should be a coronation again for A Plus Tard. Nice place for him to start his season off again. Obviously so impressive with the race 12 months ago. It's difficult to envisage defeat, isn't it?
Yeah, he is the standout sort of staying chaser, and expect him to do the business.
Just one thing about the Gold Cup that might give the others a little bit of hope is that, because he won by 15 lengths last year, is that last year they did go quite slow in the Gold Cup, which suited him because he had been a very good 2-miler. Yeah. And the second thing is that he's turning 9 years old, which is never a positive.
That's the second reference to turning 9. Although having said that, Arthur Stevenson and Gordon Richards used to say that 9 chasers peak. That's the old type of horse anyway. Okay. That was the thing. Build up, and at 9 they peak, and then after that they...
Yeah, I think 8 is really the best age for a chaser. I think 9's getting on a little bit, but yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, that's another good theory, though. I like those theories. Okay, Sam, anything else you wanted to mention in that race? Or are we just going to close it off that Aplutar wins, and perhaps if you want to back him for the Gold Cup, do so now?
Yeah, I can't really see any other scenario really than him winning comfortably.
Okay. Also at Haydock on the weekend, there's the Stayers Handicap Hurdle. Run for Oscar at the moment. That is the favourite. He's 5-1 with Bet365. I mean, we know about the quality of Charles Burns's raids over this part of the world, Gav. So
actually, he was brilliant in the Cesaro, which previously won. I think was it in Haydock on the flat. He's a thorough stayer. It probably took Charles a while to realise that he was a 3-miler over hurdles and that. So he's won his last 2 handicaps over hurdles. He's won his last 2 handicaps in the flat. So to me, he's a standout. Charles is in super form. He won the bumper yesterday. Nice little touch from 10s into 5s. When the money is down, he's a hard man to beat. So yeah, for me, it'll be Run for Oscar.
What do you think, Sam? Run for Oscar?
I think he's a major player. I think Charles nominated this race after he bolted up in the Cez. He won that, and sort of 90 rated horse. So off a mark of, 140, mid 140s here, with the potential for his son to claim another 7 off. In fact, he's already won on the flat round Haydock as well, when he was given a fair bit to do that day and still won very comfortably. You think there's plenty more left in the tank for this lad, and he's the right favourite for me. I think a couple of others that I would just like to touch on. Good Risk at All, who I was really impressed with at Carlisle. Was a good novice. Things didn't go his way. I think he was sidelined a little bit with an injury, but came back in grand fashion over 2.5 at Carlisle. Can be a bit keen, but we normally get a big field in this race, and I think that'll let him settle. I love the way he moved through that Carlisle race. They're going to get 15 to 20 mils of rain up at Haydock as well in the next few days. That's the forecast anyway. So I think that he'll be well suited by conditions, and I'd be disappointed if he didn't run a big race the way that he travels through those handicaps. The other one, the interesting one as well, another sort of big weekend handicap-wise for Harry Fry would be Mai Tai, who chased home some pretty decent horses last year. John Bond, Constitution Hill. I think Gelino Bello as well was it at Aintree in that Grade 1. So he's got some decent form in his back catalogue. The trip's a bit of a question mark with him, but he is bred and related to Statler and also Binge Drinker. It could be a very appropriate winner then over the weekend for me. But I think he's the right type of horse to go to a race with this nature. And I think he'd be winning a nice handicap this year, Mai Tai.
Yeah, I like Mai Tai. I think he's always been held in high regard, and he's looked like he's a talented horse. It's not quite come together in its entirety, but I think a bit more time, he's a horse to follow. I think I correct myself, 5-2 with Bet365 Run for Oscar. Yeah. I'm missing my glasses. That's my excuse. So 5-2.
You're getting old.
Right, steady.
You're not as old as me, though.
We've only just met. Okay, so Run for Oscar, I think we all agree, is going to take some stopping. At Ascot on Saturday, it's the Hurst Park Handicap Chase. Looks a wide open race. I mean, Time White won over course and distance. Whether or not he's quite ready to be favourite for a race this nature, I'm not entirely certain. How do you see
I
it?
think that what will make obviously a huge impact in the race is whether some of the top weights stay in, such as Edward Stone, etc. There's some highly rated horses in it. There's a lot of prize money on offer, so will they be tempted to go here? So I think we have to wait until see what the weights are. Down the bottom, a horse that jumps brilliantly of Emma Mullins called So Scottish would have a chance. He's very unexposed, but he does jump super. But again, if he's out of the weights, that's obviously a negative. But if he's in the weights, I think So Scottish at 6-1 has a good each way chance. Okay,
so Scottish. Alan King did say that Ascot is an option for Edward Stone, which would be fascinating to see the ARCA winner in this handicap. Sam, how do you see this race potentially?
Yeah, I think it could be a brilliant race, couldn't it, if he runs? Hopefully, recent history, certainly over the weekend where we saw a couple of horses with plenty of weight in handicaps go and win very tidily, will encourage Connections to do it a little bit more often. I'm always a little bit baffled, to be honest, why Connections, they worry about horses lumping 12 stone round Cheltenham, but if he had 11-12, he might still be well treated. I don't quite see the sense in that myself. But anyway, we saw it over the weekend that if you're a class horse, you can carry the weight in these races and you win comfortably. I like to move it, prove that in spades. And if Edward Stone does turn up at Ascot, then he's got to have a major play in this race. He's goes pretty well right-handed as left. He won't mind some decent ground. This race is essentially full of handicappers, of which he's a class horse, and we saw 12 months ago, what a good horse he is. So he would be sort of top of the list if he did actually run. That is a bit of a question mark. One or two horses I was drawn to. One certainly, if he does run, is Boot Hill, another Harry Fry inmate that yard look we talked about already.
So have you copied my notes?
Well, considering I'm probably about 150 miles away from you, my eyesight, even with these on, isn't that clever. But I know you're a big Harry Fry fan, so I'm just trying.
I love a Fryer.
I mean, the only slight concern with this lad is that it's just his third chase start, isn't it? And whether he's man enough for a race of this nature. But he ran really well in a hurdle round here last year. He's a horse they've always held in high esteem. That's probably what you've written in your notes as well. And that Newton Abbott run where he beat Dad's All Right Gino, that horse came out and won a handicap by 7 lengths next time out, beating a Useful Tool. So even though it was a small runner race, it started to work out well. I just like the way he fiddled his way around Newton Abbott as well. He looked a bit of a natural. He always looked a chaser, big lad, raw-boned, a bit backward last year, and biding times over hurdles. So we saw with Harry Fry likes a plan. He was a bit unlucky in the Greatwood to bump into a horse that could well go up through the grades this year. And he might get a little bit of compensation this weekend in handicaps.
Yeah, I definitely held in high regard. Ran a great race behind Soaring Glory. Travelled like the best horse in that race. All the notes are here. So
tick.
I like what he did at Newton Abbott. But I also think that he's a stronger horse. You looked at him. He's got a lot of size, as you know about these horses, but he just looked slightly weak over hurdles. And I'm hoping now that he's strengthening up that he's going to run a good race. But it's not one that I'm particularly strong on in terms of the veracity of my opinion. One exciting aspect on the weekend looks as if Constitution Hill, fingers crossed, is going to be back in action in the Ascot Hurdle.
Yes, 2 miles 3. So he's maybe the most exciting horse we've seen
ever.
Well, the last couple of years, himself and Gallopin Deschamps as a novice chaser, but him last year, sure, he was amazing in the Supreme. Yeah. To win by, what was it, 20 odd lengths. So yeah, all eyes will be on him. He'll be unbackable on Saturday, but that doesn't matter. We're just here to watch him. Yeah.
Where do you stand on Honeysuckle versus Constitution Hill right now?
Right now, I think the only negative for me again is the age of Honeysuckle. She's turning 9. I would always go for the younger horse. But to give her £7 means... So he got a rating of 170 as a novice, which was incredible. Her rating was 165, we mentioned, which brings it up to 172, considering she gets the £7. So he has to achieve a very high standard. But look, you would also just keep in mind that the Supreme last year, John Bon and Dysart Dynamo definitely took each other on a long way out. And it set it up to make him look even every bit as good that he was. But I love him, and I can't wait to see him on Saturday.
All right. Sam, what about you? Obviously, Saturday looks... I mean, whoever he comes up against on Saturday, and we won't know the final field for a while, he's expected to win. And where do you stand on Constitution Hill versus Honeysuckle for the Champion Hurdle?
I'd have him favourite all day long, Rish, I'm afraid. I know he's got it to prove, but he has at least won round Cheltenham, so he has proved that he's just not a Kempton specialist or a Newbury specialist. He's managed to do it round Cheltenham. I just think he's a bit of a freak. And I think perhaps one or two of those people close to him think that as well. And there seems to be no dimming in confidence going into this year as well with his work. I think he's had to be working with John Bon as well, and he's been kicking him out the way, allegedly, at home. So, the vibes are very, very good ahead of his comeback. Hopefully he gets a clear passage. It'd be great to see him win and win well. That's no disrespect to the other 8 horses that are in against him, but I think, National Hunt Racing, certainly this side of the Irish Sea, could really do with a marquee signing. And hopefully this lad's the one. And, he looks a bit special. I do admire Honeysuckle. I think she's a terrific mare, but I think this lad's just a bit of a freak, and he might prove that this season.
I'll tell you what would be interesting is if he has 2 or 3 runs between now and the Champion Hurdle, and let's say he bolts up each time, when he goes into the Champion Hurdle, he'll have 6 or 7 races where he's just bolted up. So there is that to it. But yeah, no, he looks an amazing horse.
And where do you stand on the Honeysuckle only does what she has to do, and we believe, or the Honeysuckle supporters believe, that she's got much more to give if she's asked to give it?
Well, there has to be merit to it because she's unbeaten. She's 16 from 16, so it's a bit of a guess to say that, but certainly there could be merit in it because she's never been beaten. So she's a remarkable mare. Yeah, she's probably the best we've seen since Dawn Run, and she's probably better than any Power, which is a big compliment.
Where do you stand on that, Sam?
I'm not sure I buy into that argument, because the way that Rachel Blackmore rides her, she's very positive on her from quite an early stage in a race, or as the race is developing, she kicks for home and tries to get the race won. So if you're on a horse that only just does enough and pulls herself up a little bit in front, then I'm not necessarily certain that you'd ride her that way. She obviously stays 2.5 really well. They maximise that. I don't think she's the slickest at her hurdles, and maybe that's why they try and take that out of the game. But she's always very, very positive on Honeysuckle, got true belief in the mare. And I think almost what we're seeing is what we get, really. And, you know, I'm not sure that she's got another 7 or 10 pounds under the bonnet. Hopefully I'm wrong. You know, we're set for a great duel if the two of them do get there in March. But I think she is where she is. You know, I think that's a fair reflection of ability, what she's actually been producing in those 16 starts.
What's very interesting with her is that she wins nearly every race between the 3 and the 2.
Yeah.
It's literally over the last every time, because she has that pace to inject. It's not a sprint at the end. It's kind of like at the 3 furlong pole to the 2 pole.
Yeah.
That's where she puts in the power. So it'll be interesting when Constitution Hill is sitting on her tail turning in next March.
It will be interesting. All very exciting. And of course, we could see more champion hurdle contenders on Sunday. The Morgiana, we don't know definitely what will run. We don't know what Willie's going to run in the race. So yeah,
we get the 5-day decks tomorrow Tuesday, and at the moment there's 11 in the long-term entries. Willie is most of those. So, you know, is he going to run Vauban or maybe Stateman? I'd say it'll be one of those two. Maybe Stateman might wait for the race against Tony Suckle at Fairyhouse, perhaps over 2.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd imagine Vauban will be the one, and if he runs, he'll be very, very short. What will Gordon run? Maybe Tihupu, but yeah, I'd say Vauban or Stateman will win, yeah. All right.
And Vauban, Stateman, how live are their champion hurdle hopes?
Vauban is a 5-year-old, so, 5 next January, 5 for Cheltenham. Very difficult for those age groups, but he's probably the best Triumph Hurdle winner we've seen in 6 or 8 years.
Okay.
But he's just coming into an era where we've got these 2 freaks, really. Constitution Hill and Honeysuckle, so very difficult to beat one of those. And Stateman, does he have the gears for 2 miles? He did win over the county hurdle, then he won over 2.5. They're both very unexposed, but they've to get nearly to 180 is a long way up.
All right. Sam, is there anything else at all that you're keen on for this week ahead? If not, no problem. There's one more question I wanted to pose to you.
I haven't had a chance to go through Saturday's declarations just yet. I mean, I think that's a fascinating race, the Morgiana, because I'm a big fan of Vauban, as you know, Rish. But nobody could crib the way that Stateman went and bolted up in the county hurdle, went extremely well backed, and obviously the vibes in his work pre Cheltenham were such that, you know, he was well supported into 5-1, and they thought that even that was a big price. But as I say, I love Vauban. I thought he improved with each run. I think he's got gears. It'd be really fascinating to see how he gets on. You know, it's been a while since we've seen a decent Triumph Hurdle winner go and mix it with, you know, 1 or 2 very good champion hurdle horses. You know, we've got potential with Constitution Hill, and we've got the proven ability of Honeysuckle. So it's going to be a strong division this year. It's been a while since we've said that.
Yeah, exciting times. Don't go anywhere, Sam. The last subject in this sort of preview, it's not actually about this weekend, but we had news recently that Allaho is out of the King George. A little bit of combining the conversation about where do you see Allaho fitting in for plans, say, for anti-post punting, and then what you like for the King George at this stage before?
After King George, probably brave man's game. I definitely would have fancied Allaho to beat him over 3 miles around there. But Allaho, like, I'd love a cornerstone of a multiple, even at 6-4, because, you know, he's bolted up by 14 lengths twice in the Ryanair, so yeah. I'd love him in Trixies or in Yankees, etc. But the fact that Willie said yesterday to Gary O'Brien that we may or might have 1 run before Cheltenham, that didn't seem 100% to me. So he's obviously done it before, where he went straight to Cheltenham with Quevega and various horses, and he has tons in hand for the Ryanair. But I was going to put Allaho into multiples, but I won't now. All right. No.
Interesting. Sam, what are your thoughts on the King George at this stage?
Well, I mean, obviously L'Impresse, if it was to run firstly at Ascot this weekend, and then
go L'Impresse, yeah.
Exactly, Rich. I'm just trying to tick all the boxes. I'm trying to get myself back in the studio next year.
You're doing well so far. You're doing
David looks way too comfortable for me there.
He's promised me golf in Ireland, so that's one up on you. So
exactly. I mean, I'm sure that the Nichols team were jigging about down in Ditchy like good ones when they heard the news about Allaho not running. Envoy Allen, I'm still not convinced by him. That win at Down Royal, the circuit time was slower than the handicap chase. I know there's better to come, but I'm still not convinced he's back to where he was at one point. And Long Press is the joker in the pack, really. See how he advances his claims going into the race, if indeed he does even go there. But it looks set up for Brave Man's Game. He's trained by a master who's enjoyed unqualified success in that race. It's like Santa Claus, isn't he, Rishi? He always appears at Christmas, Paul Nichols, Kempton on Boxing Day, and always delivers.
Not sure how you're going to use that analogy there, but thank you. Sam, as always, great to have you on the show. In future, maybe you can come back to the studio. Gavin, it's been a real pleasure to have you on as well. It's been fascinating hearing your thoughts on punting, anti-post punting, and your thoughts on the weekend's racing and what we've just had and what's to come. So, brilliant. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. And that is it for this edition of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Many thanks to Sam and to Gavin, and of course to you at home for watching this episode. As always, if you've liked what you've heard or seen, then please leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts or in the comments section on YouTube. Next week, we're going to be joined by Megan Nichols to help us preview the Fighting Fifth and the Winter Carnival at Newbury. We hope to have brought you a couple of winners along the way, but for now, bye-bye.